I know you're gonna dig this.
Media?
Yeah, for what time?
Well, I have an all-day pass. Wait, 1 o'clock. Thank you. So this is day 2 of Runway 7's fashion show at Sony Hall. I had to come in and give my information so that way I could get access. It was crowded, as you can see, by the lady trying to burrow past me. It was fine.
Yeah, can I get one press?
So I got my press pass. Which way? Around that way or that way?
Down the steps.
And I head down the steps towards the dungeon. Did not expect it to be this large in here because I have not been in Sony Hall before, but it was pretty big. And I did not do my normal walkthrough with my action camera because this time around it was bouncing against my coat too wildly, so it wouldn't have looked good. During this time period, I was setting up my camera on the far right side. Well, actually stage left, but the reason I'm over here is the pit was completely taken up by photographers who had gotten there earlier during the day. So I wanted to make sure I set up on this side, and then I had to find a good enough spot to make sure I captured the runway. So I was lucky enough to get a stool on the edge of the actual walkway. So at this point, everybody had settled down, gotten into their positions. I'm just scanning the room just to give you an idea of what it looks like, who's around, and the amount of area and space I have to capture these shots. We did have some issues with a couple of people who were standing up in the way. We had to have security tell them to sit down, but other than that, it was okay. Now, for the beginning of the show, we have this intro, and there's actually a projector shining onto the wall that's showing you these images. And then our first section of performers comes out before we actually see the models. And this was really, really dope. You'll hear me talking through most of this because I had to cut the sound out for a lot of this portion. And the reason being is because of the levels with the actual sound itself. And I had to make sure that we had a consistency throughout this entire video. Now, there is a problem that I did run into, and this is me being transparent, but you'll see it now. Nobody was prepared for how these stage lights would be with recording video. And unfortunately, I was by myself manning 2 cameras. With me manning 2 cameras, I had one of them sitting down to record video. My photos come out clean, they're clear, they're balanced. My video is a little overexposed, and the reason being is because I did not compensate for the stage lighting. They were moving so fast, I had to make sure I was capturing these pictures, and I didn't have time to focus on my actual camera itself. I moved from my action camera and I started recording on my Z7 II, and these are the photos from my Z9 that you're seeing. But all in all, everything turned out well. I do hope that you will enjoy these photos. This is the Runway 7 fashion show. Again, this took place on the 11th, and these are the first set of models coming out to their designer clothes. Now, these last set of images, I realized that they didn't actually show up and come out with the other models, which was strange. I don't know why that actually happened. Now we're on to the actual designer himself, and you get a look at him. Kanye-esque, but that's him. Between sets, I always show that intermission, so that way you'll know when it's switched to a different designer. This was a very colorful set. That backdrop is extremely bright, so it will be difficult to sometimes see them until we get to the photos. But now you understand why I was saying things might be a little overexposed. The lighting was extremely bright. I exposed for the audience as opposed to the people on stage. And set that down thinking everything was going to be balanced with the initial lighting that was there, and I was wrong. So, love me anyway. Now, for most of these, you'll notice that I actually sped up the footage, and the reason being is because they walk for a pretty long period of time. And if I let that play out, this video would be extremely long. So I actually doubled up the timing of their walks so that way we could get through people. And even then, I still left out maybe about 3 to 4 designers during the second portion of the show. I was there for the 1 o'clock portion of the show, which went from 1 to 3. And then I actually shot the third show of the day, which would be the 3 p.m. show. And that one actually started and ended on time. Unfortunately, the show that I shot was 40 minutes late, so nobody understood what was going on backstage. However, the designers' clothes were actually very, very good. One of my favorite designers, which I will be posting separately, probably on my Patreon. This designer actually focused on jewelry. There was a lot of uniformity with it. But this particular designer here was more of an urban wear, and this is the actual designer herself. Give her her props. And again, we're on to our next portion of the show. And this portion was called Marginally. And if you saw how this person came out, it completely caught us all off guard. They peeked out of the runway door. But this is actually focused on aliens or different types. It was interesting to see. Nonetheless, as you see, this is Patches coming up, who will hold up his Patches sign and show that there are no patches in there. Very upset. I'm not sure what the entirety of this line was designed for, other than maybe some kind of unique look. I do like the play on the masks, and the clothes did fit the masks very well. You will see who the designer actually was later on. They're going to come out and be walked up by one of their designs, and that will be coming up in 3, 2, 1. So we jumped from the Martian line to more of an elegant line. Not to say the Martian line wasn't, but it is a very acquired taste. Like I said, it caught us all off guard. But this line was more based on gowns and seemingly evening wear. But it was very, very well done. I like the flare and sparkles in the background on the wall. As you can see, these are more dress focused. Now, every one of these outfits goes along with a gold color scheme, as you'll see with the remaining few outfits that are left in the collection. But I'll sit back and let you enjoy the rest of those photos. And once again, we have our designer coming out to say thank you and take a bow at the end of the stage. And then we move on to our next set. And this designer was very similar to one of the earlier designers in terms of the backdrop. So we have a very, very bright backdrop, but these backdrops worked very well. I'm kind of intrigued to see how they're actually projecting onto them. You would think they were LCD screens by how vivid the colors were and how precise it was, and the fact that they did not overlay over the models when they came out. So I am very, very curious as to how they did this. I gotta say that I do appreciate how well constructed the gowns in both of the shows were. They form fit very well, and you don't see any breaks or mishaps in the construction itself. So kudos to the designers. And now we're on to our next set. Now, this set was beautiful. This one was the most extravagant set out of every designer set that was in both shows that I attended. As you can see by the construction of the actual dresses themselves or the capes in some instances, but I'll just lay low and let you watch the remainder of it. Now, this particular dress was clearly the tightest fit of all of them. It took her quite some time to get down the runway. And then this was probably the model who enjoyed her walk the most. She was extremely excited to be out there. So much so that she made the designer take a second bow with her. And we're on to our next set. This set was more along the lines of evening wear, but with a certain flair and flash to it, as you'll see here, with both the women and men pieces that were included. There were not that many men in the show, only a few, but they did have them scattered throughout through some of the designers' collections. This particular piece was reminiscent of something from a fairy tale. And I don't know this person's name, but they killed it. And again, this may be one of the few instances we get to see a guy on the runway. And if you look, you'll notice that this designer does have a signature style with the capes that seem to flow almost to one side, where they can whisper them around and make them flow outward. This was one of my favorite models because she knew her angles and to pose for each segment of the audience. This particular dress had a very long train attached, as you can see, which is why the young girl is following her out to make sure it doesn't drag too far. And now you can meet your designer. And now we're on to our next section. And in this section, we're presented with more of an extravagant evening/formal wear. I think one of the things I liked the most about this particular line was the variation of colors. We have red, greens, golds, and even white within this line of clothing, which gave way to a huge variety of different looks. And that will bring us towards the end of the line with our last piece, the white flowing gown, and then our introduction of the designer, who is coming up now. I did have a bunch more pictures, but it would make the video too long, so I will be adding those to my Patreon. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take it easy. Love you. Peace.